Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends. Today we have a relatively interesting story because this is something I have never actually seen before. The Nebraska legislature has approved a bill that actually lowers the minimum wage from $15 an hour to $13.50 an hour for young workers. And by young workers, I mean between the ages of 14 and 15. They can now be paid less than I guess the minimum wage would be for people who are older than that, which is absolutely fucked up. And in addition to that, it also allows for people who are between the ages of 16 and 18 to have a trial period whereby, actually 16 through 19 have a trial period whereby they can receive that $13.50 an hour, but only for a 90-day training period, right? Because, fuck the young people. So relatively interesting here because I've never actually seen anything like this throughout my time. And so I want to talk about the minimum wage here today and just how absolutely disgraceful this is for us young Gen Zers. Now, as a member of the Gen Z myself, one of the things that you'll come across all the time is the constant ageism. And now, sometimes, I'm not going to lie, my generation kind of does things on themselves. But then again, society also places all these constraints on them that we simply cannot shake. Just look at it this way, right? A lot of Gen Z may not have that same work ethic that people back in, say, the 1970s once had. Look, I think it's probably just a fact. But, when they do work and they work, comparably hard, what happens? Well, they get paid less. Their houses cost more. Their food cost more. All their electronics cost more. Their cars cost more. Their cost of living in like every way, shape, and form is worse. And so really, they're getting screwed. They're constantly getting screwed all of the time. And so, you can see why sometimes they might lose a little bit of motivation, a little bit of interest to continue working at a high level. But regardless, what I want to say here is I don't think this excuses the fact that the older generations can absolutely shit on us, right? As a Gen Zer, I remember one time I was interviewing for a principal position. And I was at the time, the youngest person who was licensed in the state of Ohio to have a principal license. And I remember being all excited. I'm going into this thing thinking I'm going to nail it. I'm obviously more prepared than anybody else for this position. It was an assistant principal position. And, person, literally going to Harvard here, right? I went to Harvard at one point. I have a doctorate now. And so I know my shit, right? And I went in, I review all the documents. I watch all the board meetings, everything, every little detail you could possibly know. I got every single fact memorized better than anybody, like the back of my hand. I'm in an interview and they tell me, they say, hey, what do you know about the, graduation requirements for the state of Ohio? Right. And, so I'm rattling off. I'm nailing it perfectly. They're like, oh, you can see their eyes light up, right? Next question. They're like, all right, so tell us about how you're going to combat chronic absenteeism. I quote the exact bloody number to them, and somebody actually looked down. They're like, "Oh my god! That's the exact percentage." Right? They were mind blown, right? But in the same breath, I get a call later that week, and they tell me it was like, "Well, hey, look, you were by far the best candidate. You had the best answers by far, no contest. But we think you just need a little bit more experience. I think you need a little bit more experience." And it's like, excuse me. And then, I'm just sort of spark noting this here, but it's like, are you kidding me? Fuck you. And that's what we got to deal with here as Gen Z, right? Don't even matter if you're qualified anymore. Nobody could care less, right? Nobody could care less, right? They literally told me I was more qualified than other candidates, but yet they're not going to hire me, right? And then what's also too funny? They said that I haven't made enough mistakes in my career yet. And so therefore, they feel some reserve regarding my candidacy. May I be struck down right now and shot in the brain if I'm lying, right? It's the most ridiculous thing. And that's what people are dealing with. And, I've gotten relatively lucky. I do my job. I keep politics completely out of my work. I do my thing. I go home. I do a very good job at it too. But at the time, this was a couple of 2-3 years ago now, that was a real gut punch, right? And I'm somebody who's very ambitious and, has the credentials to back things up. And so, unfortunately, and I got the gift of gab, right? And so, unfortunately, I didn't even get lucky. So, can you imagine the average person here in our generation? It ain't looking good for them. And the numbers show that, right? I mean, in our generation now, you're actually less likely to be, you're actually more likely to be unemployed the more education you get. So tell me how that's messed up, right? Tell me how we're doing things wrong. And then you get, meanwhile, I get the president of the United States on the line, being interviewed. And he's like, oh yeah, it's like, we need to to raise the prices of houses actually. And it's like, excuse me, bro? Like, dude, my generation is so bloody cooked, dude. And then now they just come out and start discriminating against you, right? Which is so ridiculous. And so, one of the things that I thought was actually pretty funny, not funny, I'm terrible, but I looked into this, right? Because I was like, all right, like the whole experience thing, they're not going to come out and flat out say, hey, look, we're not hiring you because of your age, right? But I was curious because, I wonder if you could always find like an internal email or something. Like you get a subpoena under like some, probable cause. Granted, who the hell knows? I don't know. Probably not. Probably would never happen. But if you did, I'm always curious to see like if they're discriminated against you for your age, and is there any recourse for people who are at a younger age? And the answer is actually no. And so going back to my story here, the answer is no. They can discriminate against young people perfectly fine. They could be like, yeah, you're just stupid little 18-year-old. I'm not hiring that person, right? No, like, come on now. We're gonna solely on the basis of their age. I'm not gonna hire them, right? And then like you have that in 4K, 240 FPS. OLED display, image there, screen captured perfectly from their email, and it doesn't matter, right? You could pull up the goddamn account to a judge, and it doesn't matter because you can legally discriminate against young people, whereas you can't do that for old people. Again, of course, this is solely discrimination on the basis of age, which I've always found ridiculous, and I don't agree with that at all. If you do the job, it shouldn't matter if you're 15 or if you're 20. The pay should be the same. Full stop. Don't give me no BS regarding, they're younger. We're trying to give them some good experience in the job market, bro. It's like, dude, fuck off, bro. If you can't afford the 150, you can't afford an employee. Don't start a bloody business. And how about that, right? And you'll say, okay, well, it's funny because I was reading this article here, and and they're talking about, a tax on the this would be a tax on the business owners. And it's like to raise the minimum wage. And it's like, okay, well, no shit. Yes, of course there's a tax. It's like, but instead of, how about taking food out of the mouths of people who are actually working and trying to help run this country? How about instead and by the way, too, people think that $15 an hour is a lot of money. And like, it's like, that's just because you're fucking brain dead, right? I mean, $35 an hour working 40 hours a week is like 60 grand a year. So don't tell me that $15 an hour is a lot of money. It's like, no, miss me with that. But they're taking food out of the mouths of people. And when in reality, what they probably should be doing is removing the bureaucracy surrounding starting business to begin with, and all the regulation and licensing fees that go along with it. And so, one of the things I tried to do about 6 months ago was actually start a business, a jewelry business. Huge fan of jewelry. I love jewelry. I also looked at acquiring things like dispensaries and gas stations and whatnot because, to me, running the rat race of the 9 to 5, it's cool. It can be cool and all if you like your job. But in the same breath, it's like, I don't know if I could do it for the next, 30 years. And so I was looking at business opportunities here. And one of the things that just blew my mind was, let's say that you have a private property, right, with a private business, and you want to do your private sales. And, it's your property. Do what you want, bro, right? Wrong. You got to literally, in like most cities, you have to get like literal permits to get signs. And you got to get them approved by like these like random like commissions that are like that. It just feels like the Soviet Union, for God's sake, right? It's like, okay, so I can't even put up a sign on my own bloody business without getting approved by some crazy authoritarian board somewhere. Is that not more of a priority than lowering the minimum wage? Like, to me, like that would be like the first thing you would scrap. Like, how about this, right? Maybe you want the board Gestapo, right? Some freaking asshole whose whole job it is to go around and measure boards. And you're like, okay, well, maybe your board's can only be this big or whatever. Or they got to meet like certain criteria, right? They can't be strobing lights, right, that are angled towards like a car or something. Like, I don't know what it is, right? But you can at least write out the requirements. And then you could say, okay, as long as you meet these requirements, you're good. Do whatever you want on your sign, and make sure the requirements are within reason, right? But instead, what do we get? We got like all these requirements, and then they got to still approve the messaging and whatnot because they don't want anything to be obscene. They don't want anything to be obscene, right? And this is as if that's, if this, business owners are putting the most provocative, offensive things that we need to worry about as a society, and not the literal pedophiles running the country. So I don't know. Like, I'm sorry here, but sometimes a cigar is a cigar, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm here to call it out. And so, not good. I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to go over well with people in Nebraska. But then again, this doesn't affect most people in Nebraska, so they don't care, which unfortunate as it is. And, they'll still probably vote Republican moving forward, unfortunately, because fucking brain dead. With that said, like the minimum wage too is a really interesting conversation in regards to the fact that the pricing is something that I don't think a lot of people understand. And as you raise the minimum wage, it turns out that you actually don't raise the cost of goods. Doesn't tend to happen, nor do higher wages tend to rise either. So, if you were making $20 an hour, you're probably not going to get a raise that's comparable to the increased raise, from minimum wage. So that's a little bit concerning. That's one economic fact there, and maybe people take that into consideration when they're voting. I'm sure a lot of people do. But what I can tell you is, too, the prices of goods don't really drastically increase that much. The prices of things like food, that increases more than anything. But outside of that, things don't really increase that much. And you can verify all of this. And think about it this way: we're a global economy. If you raise the minimum wage in a particular area, it's not really going to do much. So a lot of the studies that we have on it, a lot of these effects get negated by the fact that we're a globalized economy, or global interconnectedness, right? Whereas, if you were to do this across the country, the effects would be exacerbated just a little bit. But still, at the end of the day, more money is more money. And you're probably going to be making more money if the minimum wage is a little bit higher. And because I don't think that there's I don't know how you can look me in the face. I don't know how you can look anybody in the face and tell them that if they work 40 hours a week, that they can't afford, just a basic little apartment or a basic little house and, with the bare bones, at least necessities, but food in their belly, a nice bed to sleep in, some heat and air conditioning. And maybe have like a small car, maybe not the fancy car or nothing, but a small car. Like if you work 40 hours a week anywhere, it's like that should be like the bare minimum standard of living in the year 2026. But if you say that, then all of a sudden people get their panties in a bunch and they get all upset and like, oh, well, you're just some stupid liberal. Like you're so dumb. You're so stupid. You're stupid liberal. You don't know anything. It's like, okay, bro. I can't stand it, man. But that's the way our world is. We can't have rational discourse anymore. And so, I don't know. Everybody always likes to throw around the ad hominems. I'm certainly no exception to that. But in the same breath, God damn, some of y'all be stupid, bro. I swear to God. I swear to God. Like, is that not what you want for the future generations? Like, do you not want the future generations to have it easier than you had it? It's like you always talk to the boomers and they get so upset and so angry at the fact that, oh, well, like when back in my day, we used to work 80 hours a week in the coal mines for $4 an hour. Now, granted, back then that should probably be $1 billion, no, but and the houses were practically free. Okay, and the money was literally made out of precious metals, like $1. Like, dude, I can't, bro. This is ridiculous. But in the same breath, like. Regardless of all that, don't you think that the next generation should have it better? Like, I'm sorry. It's like the whole argument, like, oh, yeah, like we used to, walk uphill to go to school in snow blizzards, snowstorms. And it's like, okay, maybe, bro, but don't you want it better for the next generation? And it's like, why is that lost on us, right? Why is that lost on us? I don't get it. I don't get it. I think that they just need to pick up their part a little bit more. For God's sake, stop being so bloody greedy. Right? E pluribus unum, out of many one. Ladies and gentlemen, can we not all come together on this and try to help out the next generation? I don't know. But with that said, guys, hope you did enjoy the video here. Nice little rant and rave for you guys, but it's an important rant and rave to have. And so I really hope that you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for some more content. We're almost at 450 subscribers. Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Ian Phillips, and peace.